Welcome to your
Hello, church. Welcome to
life.
this week's message. My name is Henry Loke. This is God's Feeding Station. It's an honor and a blessing to be with you again this week as we continue in our series on Reclaiming Surrendered Ground, Spiritual Warfare by Jim Logan. Slumming a little bit today just because it's starting a new job and just trying to still sort out the logistics and timing of everything. So jumping in when I can. Excuse me. But today we're talking about roles and responsibilities of wives and mothers, and it's from 1 Peter 3 and 4. We'll read that here in a minute. But you know, we talked last week about fathers and husbands, and the spiritual warfare picture wouldn't be complete if we didn't include wives and mothers, because women are soldiers in this spiritual battle as well as men. And so to understand where the chinks are, or at least a couple of them are, in women's armor, let's take a look at our scripture for today, 1 Peter 3, beginning of verse 3. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing you wear. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. First and foremost, Peter says women aren't supposed to focus on outer beauty. We place a lot of emphasis on how good looking we all are on any given day in this world today. And we're not to do that. Women particularly are not to do that, because everybody gets old, right? The clock is ticking, and we may be attractive now, but gravity and old age are just around the corner. And no matter how much reconstruction, how many surgeries you have, how many injections you take, how much Botox you take, whatever, nobody gets out of here alive. And I've seen pictures of people who've been doing the Botox thing. Some of it's not good. It's just not good. And so, you know, we're not to worry about those types of things. There are two qualities, Peter says, that never corrupt, that never fade, and they grow more beautiful in the eyes of God over time. Right? Gentleness, meekness, and a quiet spirit. So we're going to look at those. The word for gentleness in the Greek is praus, and it's defined as gentle and mild. Jesus used that word to describe his own disposition. And the opposite of that is anger. And it's a different kind of anger, because women get angry just as men get angry. But there's a difference. The kind of anger that women experience leaves them a little bit more susceptible to Satan's temptations and his attacks. Men tend to express their anger physically or verbally, right? Women tend to internalize things a little bit more. And they're probably more verbal than men are. Men will throw things, punch a wall, go out in the garage and, take a sledgehammer to something, kind of thing. That's how men usually react. I think, I have drums, and sometimes I take my anger out on that. Women tend to internalize things a little bit more, and they're more verbal. And so when men get angry, sometimes it causes us to go off. And in the Greek, this is known as thumos, and it's anger that blows up, and it affects everybody and takes everybody in the fallout, but then it burns out quickly. Right? We throw something, we're over it, it's over and done with. Women are different. Women, their anger sometimes comes from frustration. It builds over time. It's on the back burner. It simmers and simmers and simmers, and when it does blow, it's not pretty. And it's things like husbands being seemingly indifferent to their wives' concerns, or she may feel that things aren't going the way she thinks they should at home or at work, or she doesn't think people are doing their share, for example. And so it's this slow burn. Orge is the word in the Greek. And it has a long-lasting attitude, and sometimes it can lead to a desire to get even. And the verb form of this word means to provoke, to seek, to seek revenge, or be provoked to irritations or embitterment. It's like charcoal, right? We all know what charcoal's like, right? It's hard to light, but once it goes, and it stays hot for a long time after you're finished cooking the steak. And so that's what women are vulnerable to. And many men, when they hear it described this way, will tell you they've experienced that, right? I know I have. I know a lot of men who have. And if it's left unchecked and it's not dealt with, it can turn to bitterness. And then it's snide remarks, lack of respect, looking for every little thing to take issue with. That's what happens. And it, again, just look out when it goes that route, because then it seems like there's no satisfying a woman when she gets to that point. And you understand why when you understand where it comes from, right? She doesn't just wake up one morning and decide she's going to be angry. A lot of times it's stuff that's building over time. And again, it's that old joke of men, when we ask, hey, are you okay? And a woman goes, yes. We go, okay. If you tell us you're okay, we're going to take your word for it. But sometimes that isn't the case. And so this simmering can get to a point where it blows up, and then there's all kind of problems in the marriage. Logan tells of a wife who was angry with her husband because he wasn't taking on the role of husband and provider the way she thought he should. And her anger ended up turning to bitterness and became part of the problem. And when Jim Logan confronted her about her bitterness, her part in some of the issues, she got angry. Well, it's his fault. Well, but you've allowed yourself to get bitter, so now, we're dumping gasoline on a fire here. So we have to be careful. And I'm not here to give marital advice by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just giving you the ins and outs of what to be aware of in the spiritual battle. Because women are more sensitive. And this is the complementary side that the world sometimes ignores, right? And all these efforts to convince us that men and women are the same when they're not, we miss the fact of this nurturing, sensitive side that women have that men don't necessarily have. I know I was a stay-at-home dad, and my kids, they turned out fine, but there's a difference between how I dealt with things and how my wife would deal with things. There's a nurturing side to women that men don't necessarily have, and that's a vital piece that has to be there and has to be part of raising kids. But it's a huge plus because it complements our intuitions. How women see things, their intuitions, how they view things, how they handle things is a huge plus to how men deal with things, and a huge plus to relationships because it rounds the whole thing out. You get the best of all worlds when you have two people working in concert, raising kids, being in a marriage, working together. It's a great thing. But when it's not going well, it can lead to that slow burn that Satan then can use to gain a foothold. Because Satan loves to pour kerosene on a woman's frustrations and then get in between her and her husband. And then again, as I said earlier, what begins to happen is she begins to tear down, to attack, to disrespect, to nitpick. And then his reaction, he just gets angry. And men will just shut down. Men don't always want to talk about things. And especially if this goes on for a period of time, men have a tendency to just go, well, this is just going to be the way it is. And it's either one of two things. They get divorced or they just shut down and deal with it. But it's not a happy place to be. It's not a happy marriage. They're not working together. And it's contentious. And the other thing is, when that happens, then Satan has a foothold in two lives, and now their kids, if they have kids, become open to the harassment of the demons as well. So the second quality Peter talks about is a quiet spirit, right? That doesn't mean a woman is to remain silent, not by any stretch of the imagination. It means that she has a heart that fully trusts and rests in God, right? And so what that means then is the opposite of a quiet spirit would be what? Would be a fearful spirit. But this has everything to do with a calm, trusting attitude that relies on God and drives out fear. Does that mean a woman isn't allowed to fear? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. The Bible describes the fear she's allowed to have, though, and it goes for all of us. We're allowed holy fear, right? Reverence of God. Because when a woman gives in to hysterical fear, they have a tendency then to get out in front of God to try to get out and fix things, right? You think of Sarah, think of Rebecca. Sarah trying to find an heir for Abraham, and so she gives him her maidservant, and it all goes south, right? It creates tension, it creates resentment, all kind of things happen. Rebecca, and trying to gain the birthright for her son, and all these things that are going on, and everything that all the machinations and the deceit that went on in that situation. So women can struggle with a fearful spirit, and that's how they have a tendency to react. And that's why they get angry and lash out at times. And the other thing is, part of the reason is women see more than men see. Women are more in tune to what's going on in the intricacies of relationships and life, in general, than men are. I'll give you, like, from a house perspective. A woman will see little defects here and there with the house that she thinks need to be fixed. Where a man will be, they don't realize anything's going wrong until the roof caves in or the pipes burst and there's a massive leak. And it's like, oh, I guess we should fix that. It's just how we are. But women seem to notice things more often than men will. And, men just become content to live with it, and women aren't. And so when things don't happen, and if a woman doesn't say anything, or she says something and a man doesn't deal with it, you see how it snowballs into conflict. The issue grows. And it degenerates into fear and anxiety. Laundry is a stickler in our house. My wife has certain ways she likes things done, and I have a tendency to just kind of throw things in all together, and it works out however it works out. But my wife has work clothes, and she's got to look presentable because she works in high tech, and there's a certain appearance she has to maintain. And if Henry's doing laundry and leaves, one of her work blouses in the dryer for 4 hours and it gets all wrinkled, I'm not being helpful. I'm actually making her do more work than if I just let her do the laundry, which is kind of where things fall. And it's okay. I'll take care of my stuff if I know it's in the washer, but when it's her stuff, I know that I don't get it, and I need just to stay clear of that. And it's okay, and we have that understanding. But if you persist if I would persist in trying to be helpful, like I said, I end up causing more work and more discontent because I'm not as attentive to it as she is. And so, you develop these things of, you know where your lane is, and you stay in that lane. So when fear takes over, we deny God's ability to take care of things, to control our lives. And if a woman is trusting in her husband to take care of things and her husband's not, that can lead to fear. And that's a big issue. Not always, but often enough. But who should a woman put her trust and faith in? God, not her husband. And if she does that, things can be different. Because the Bible never tells men that they should put their trust in their wives, and never tells wives that they should put their trust in their husbands. We're to put our trust in God, and that's a big difference. Take raising kids. It's a big concern. We approach things sometimes differently and how we should raise kids, discipline, education, leisure time. What sports and extracurricular activities should they be participating in? These are the things that parents fret over. And fear in those areas, especially discipline, can stop us from exercising our faith in God and our roles as parents. If those concerns aren't shared equally in a marriage, that could spell trouble. And so that's why there needs to be communication in a marriage. The hard conversations have to happen. Men have to get over the fact that it's obvious something's wrong with their wives, but the wife is saying, yeah, she's fine. And we're like, okay, we're content to just not deal with it. Doesn't work. It can work. You can do that, but what's going to be the state of your marriage? And if you're doing that now, what is the state of your marriage now? The state of your relationship now? So, what do you want? What do you want? You have to, ask yourself that question. What do you want, and what are you willing to do to get it? If you want a marriage that is working in concert, and you two are rowing in the same direction, then you got to have these conversations. And yeah, they're hard. They're uncomfortable. I get it. Trust me, I get it. But that's what has to happen. So, because what you don't want is your wife to be thinking she's stuck in the middle. Because when it comes to discipline, she could feel stuck between you and her kids. Or she can feel stuck between a husband and her mother-in-law. There's all these situations where she could feel stuck in the middle. And if that's where she is, that's when Satan will take advantage of those situations and drive a wedge. So those situations need to be discussed and dealt with. And again, woman needs to talk to her husband about her role in his role in the household. And if he doesn't respond to his God-given responsibilities, then the wife has to take the hard route. She's got to turn him over to God. Trust God that God will bring the right pressures to bear at the appropriate times and not go on the attack. Let God deal with him. But pray for him and ask God to move him in the way that is according to God's will. That's the other thing. When we pray to God, we always pray to get what we want. And the joke is, the women marry men, and women are going to fix the guys, right? That's the joke. It's not up to women to fix guys. It's not up to guys to fix women. If there's something that needs to be dealt with, God will deal with it, and that needs to be the prayer. The prayer needs to be, God, change his heart so that he goes in accordance with your will. That's what has to happen. In Proverbs 2, he's talking about kings, but this applies to men as well. Proverbs 21, verse 1. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. That's a great reminder for husbands, right? Because two things change the course of water: time or pressure. A man will usually shut down from anyone who puts pressure on him. We don't like that. We don't like pressure. So as a wife, your job is to relent and release us to God, because God is the only one who can change hearts and knows how to use time and pressure to move us in the direction, again, in accordance with his will. Right? He knows how to do that in the right timing, not you. Same for husbands. If there's things that wives need to be changed in your wives, it's not up to you to do that. It's up to you to hand them over to God and let God bring those pressures in his time, in his will. Because again, husband and wives, the Bible shows us, complement one another. So it's important that we're moving together in accordance with God's will. Because we see issues from different points of view. But that's a good thing, because it can sharpen each other's outlook. And there are going to be times when one or the other insists things get done their way. We've all come to that at some point. And when that happens, that's when we need to turn to God. Trust needs to be placed in God for Him to deal with that situation and for Him to bring His guidance and wisdom and discernment in those moments. Next week, we're going to talk some more about women and wives and how things work in the spiritual battle realm and how couples together can work together to defeat Satan together. And it's an important section of the book because a lot of times men particularly will go off and see themselves as the knights in shining armor and try to take these things on themselves. And we're not to do that. If we're in a marriage, especially if we have kids, there's got to be a joined effort here to combat Satan as he continues to try to drive wedges and get a foothold and build strongholds in our families. So until then, I hope you have a great week. Thanks for being here. And Lord willing, we'll chat next week. Take care. Bye-bye.